All right. Just wanted to talk a little bit today about the spell that we did a while back. Oh, geez, how long ago was it? Like 2 months ago now, almost.
Yeah, it was April 27th.
And we did that with several friends. Like several of us got together and did it based off of needs and to develop trust, right, with the divine, with the mother, with Hecate. Um, and so I wanted to start off, I guess, just by like sharing some of the things that were on my list of needs. And I don't know if you want to do the same and we can kind of go through any of the experiences we've had since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So on my list of needs, I put a home. 'Cause as you know, like I'm in the process of selling mine and I have no idea what the future holds as far as that goes. Community and connection was the other thing. Financial, like physical security is taken care of without like worry. I don't want to worry about all that kind of kind of thing. Um, and then like one of the other things, so we wrote like our needs down, and then and then I spoke mine out loud, and what I wrote down is a little bit different than what I had spoken. So I had written down like I want to feel seen and I want to understand my value. And kind of one of the things that I had expressed when we were doing that spell was that like I want to move through this world in a way where my existence is enough and I don't have to worry about all of these things and taking care of everything. I just kind of want it to like fall in place and again, not stress, not worry, but there's a lot of that goes into that, I think. Especially like being seen, right? Because if I want to be seen, then I have to put myself out there and holy shit, that's scary. Right?
Yeah, no, I feel you.
And the same with community, because after doing the spell, like, that community connection piece has really been, like, a big thing for me, like, just figuring out, like, how deep that need actually goes and figuring out specifics in community and even just learning how to show up better in community because that was never really, like, a thing I was taught. Um And so there's been a lot that's gone into that that's been really interesting we can dive into. Um, did you wanna share what you have on your list?
Yeah, and first let me say I say I won't get surprised, but we always it's very similar to the list that you had. As you know, we've been going through kind of some housing insecurity as well. And currently living with a family member and in a very small space. So that was probably the biggest ask that I was asking for, and just kind of the same thing. It's just an ability to have the financial means that without having to do something that I hate doing. Another one for me was also similar, to feel worthy, to feel just worthy of being in the spaces that I'm in, which I have a lot of trouble feeling, I think a lot of the times. And then I had more specific and one that kind of was taken care of for me, I think like a day or two after I asked for it. I had asked that my mother-in-law wouldn't be speaking with the family that I had got no contact with. And and very shortly, a few days I think after I had asked for that, it was brought front and center. There had been, there was a lot of big, arguments and things that took place, and I do think though that that is more resolved now. I think, I finally got the point across that, keeping in contact with people that abused you is kind of a form of a secondary abuse anyways, and I don't think that they know my mother-in-law actually kind of knew that, you know? So I think in the end, even though it was a few weeks of kind of torment, I think that that one actually got taken care of pretty quick. Still waiting on the house, still waiting on the financial stuff, but you know, I'm sure it takes a bit to get those going, you know?
Yeah. I
And then I
remember
guess, huh?
I remember you telling me about the stuff with your mother-in-law, so I'm glad to hear that things have really kinda settled down and evened out for you there.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I think you have to just coming from who, you know, I have a very hard time with confrontation, you know, with everything, and it just it rattles me to my core, but I think that that's something that I've been really working on trying to get better at, because when I'm not sticking up for myself, I'm abandoning myself, and I think that that's a really important thing for me, even if I'm doing it while I'm, you know, my voice is shaking, and I think it's good that I like stick up for myself for those, and sometimes it does come out in anger, you know, and but I think what I needed to say, you know, what I said needed to be said, because it is, you know, keeping in contact with people who have done things like that to you, and just for the simple fact of keeping in contact with them is not acceptable, you know, and so I think we've come to a more of a amicable solution on that. So that is definitely good. Or and community as well. Community has been a big thing. Like, you know, that was kind of one of my like to have genuine community though. You know, I've not had a lot of community where I was really like where I really trusted them, honestly. You know, that's a theme that comes up a lot for me is I've had my words and my honesty and my vulnerability used against me like so many times, you know, in my life, my parents and community and coworkers, and it's just like it's been a common theme throughout. And I think that's one of the hardest things with trust for me is to be open and vulnerable, and you know, even and to the point where even if people do use it against me, you know, not to stop being vulnerable and stop sharing. So,
Hard thing because I struggle a lot with community, and I struggle a lot with, like, speaking up and, like, standing up for myself that way too. A lot of it for me comes back to, like, this fear of abandonment, really. It's like, if I speak up and you don't like the things that I have to say, are you just gonna, like, hightail it out of here or say, like, "Hey, sorry," you know, uh, "We don't have time for you anymore," kind of a thing? And that's been, like, such a really hard thing, actually, that's been coming up for me to kinda, like, work through with all of this, because it really does hit on one of those needs of, like, belonging, right? And that fear of, um, not being lovable for whatever reason, right? And I think when you grow up having, like, childhood, I think, like, what we did, it makes it really hard. It makes it really hard. But I know for me, like, when it comes to that kinda stuff, like, I keep having these things come up to actually work through. Um, and I think that's helpful. Like, it's scary as shit. And sometimes I wish you it's like, can we just get to the part where it's easy?
yeah. I think, yeah, my whole life, like there was a TikTok trend that like or the song, it's like, can we skip to the good part all the time? I'm like, can we just do that now? Because seriously.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think it works that way, but, you know, one of the interesting things with that particular need for me, it came up like, it comes up in the traditional aspect of community and everything, right? But it also came up in, like, a very spiritual aspect that I didn't quite expect. So, like, right after we did this spell, like, I felt very different, like, physically in my body after, and for a few days, like, I didn't understand why, and kinda with this stuff, it's like things happen, things change, and I'm like, "Whatever, it'll be clear when it's clear when I understand it," and then,
I wish I had that that like fortitude or whatever, because I don't have that very well.
it's only with, like, the physical stuff, I think. It's not with every aspect of my life, but um, you know, it makes sense when it makes sense. And I found out like later that week, it was Guadalupe. It was the mother, right? Like me physically feeling this sensation. And it's kind of hard to describe because there are different ways in which I feel the energy. But a lot of times it feels kind of like a frequency kind of thing. But it was very, very intense, especially at first after we did the spell. And I remember having like there was there were a couple of dreams. One in particular was really, really cool. And it was this feeling of like being me, being myself, but being like engulfed in a part of the mother. And it like the feeling of it, I think was just so indescribable, where it's like not a loss of self, but it's a belonging to something so much bigger than you. And that was something I hadn't really anticipated, um, which was surprising to me. And then after kind of like that more spiritual aspect and spiritual experiences, a lot of the stuff with community and learning how to be a part of community has started coming up. Um, like even little things. So my dad has was in the hospital for a while. Um, and just even like being able to identify and express needs around communication. My family is kind of terrible with some of that stuff. M- my brother at one point started like a group chat with my dad's side of the family to provide updates and that kind of stuff, and didn't include me on it. I was still getting updates from my mom, but I'm not included in the communication with the rest of the family. So I'm not getting their feedback, their questions. I'm not being included in that aspect. And it's like,
Rude.
exactly. But this is the stuff that they don't think of, and it's the stuff that actually hits me really, really hard. And so it was an
Or maybe they do think of it, you know? I know, like, we always say, "Oh, they're not," but, I don't know. I've met a lot of people that do think of it and, do it anyways, so
yeah, well, it's my brother, and we don't have the best relationship at this point anyway. He doesn't really want a whole lot to do with me. So I don't put too much stock in it for him, for his
Mhm.
part, but,
Yeah.
um, for me, it was an opportunity to identify my needs, like, very specific needs of, like, I need to be included in the communication. If you wanna have a relationship with me, you need to communicate directly with me, and if you're not including me, like, I'm telling you that that's gonna be a problem, so and I talked to my mother about it, and she was very understanding and, like, I know for her part, it wasn't anything intentional,
Yeah, and
but
that sounds like a reasonable boundary, you know?
yeah. Imagine that, me setting a boundary, who knew?
Yeah, I know, it's hard, but it works.
Or it doesn't, and that I think that's the part that I have a hard time with, it's when those boundaries get crossed. Because growing up, I was never allowed to have them.
Well, and then because and as a kid, you really can't because you are so reliant on everybody else, where boundaries really are, and I've learned this, it's really for yourself. You're saying, listen, I don't want, or I want this, and you're setting that, and then you have to enforce it for yourself. It's not like, it's like their behavior. You're like, I'm not going to stand for that anymore. That's the boundary. And then if they don't adhere to that, then you have to, remove yourself from that situation or you make the actions, which, is hard. I get it.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part. Is holding to those boundaries and maintaining those consequences. When it comes to family, because my family situation is complicated, I know yours is too. i- It's like they have these expectations. Society at large, I think, has expectations that, well, that's your family. You should be apart and accommodating and whatever. And it's like, to what end though? Like, at what point do I say, I've accommodated the shit out of them when do I become a priority? When does that care come back to me and stop being so one-sided? So, you know, and it's hard too when you don't have like a big support system in place because I know I don't. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to build. That's one of the reasons why I love like our group so much because, you know, we have a lot of things that we can talk about that I can't talk about anywhere else.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's especially with the spirituality. I've been thinking about like that aspect of it a lot for the past couple of days in particular I have just been so like against any like organized religions and I mean my family is like Italian Catholic, so like really 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 steeped in that like guilt culture and that kind of stuff and I just from as a little kid, I was just like, no, I'm not, I could see through it. Like part of my, empathic kind of things, I could just, it just wasn't fit for me. And, so for a long, long time, I was just, complete, like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Leave me alone kind of thing. And then I find myself in this space of, now having to go against all of my instincts and my first nature of not believing in anything to going, okay, I'm having to kind of rework myself into this like belief system and I do believe in it, but I think where I get caught up is my belief in myself that within the spiritual system that kind of is the roadblock. And it's yeah, it's always the belief in myself that kind of gets me stopped. But I'm definitely working on all of that and slow progress. But having you guys has been like immensely helpful, and even some of the things that I've been going through, just being able to talk to you guys about it has really like kept the trauma from really affecting me as much as it would, because I've been through a lot of terrible things, but having nobody to be able to like talk it through, or even just someone to hear you go, oh man, that sucks, like that is so helpful, and like you guys like are so, it's so valuable, and I like genuinely appreciate it, so
It's so fun. Like I love it. I love us. So, and I love you being a part.
I do too.
And I didn't know your family was Italian Catholic. So my mother's family is Italian, and my mother grew up Catholic. I was not raised Catholic, but her whole family was. So that's funny.
Yeah, uh, that was our family specialty, is the guilt.
Same here. Guilt, judgment, you know, the
Of
whole.
it. Yeah, definitely. And yeah. So it's a whole process. And but like I think and that's the part like where I feel I guess the hardest is that I'm not like, I want to be so much further along in my spiritual path, but like it's kind of silly because it's all about the journey and the path. So I try to remind myself of that, even though I always have this like I just want to be good at everything right away. So, you know.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. I feel the same way. Because in these circles, like you hear people like talking about all the cool things that they're able to do, and I'm just like, okay, like I have my own experiences, but are they to that level? I wouldn't say so. And then it's like, I don't know. There's this weird thing of like wanting, like comparing yourself, I think, and saying, hey, well, like I'm not there. Why am I not there? And I guess I don't know, cause I talk to spirit and I'm like, I wanna hear things better, and I think unfortunately, like, I am much more of a feeling person, like, the feeling in the heart space and the body and all that kind of stuff. And it's been really difficult for me because I was like completely, completely disconnected from the heart space for years, for a really long time. And so trying to get reconnected to that, like, that was a really painful experience, actually. Like last year, going through all of that, it was very painful. But now that I'm reconnected, it's like, I want so much more. And it's felt like metered out and paced, which is necessary, if I'm being honest. Because if I had started out with like this level of intensity and whatever I'm experiencing now, I don't think I would have been able to handle it.
Well, and I mean, and I've seen firsthand what happens when people take this way too fast, and it's not a pretty thing at all. But, I the thing that I've been really kind of thinking about lately, and in particular with us not being maybe like where we're at, like I think that that is going to resonate with people because there's going to be, it like our voice is going to matter in the exact like level and space that we are in because it's going to resonate with people that are in that space as well. So I think that it's important to be in all of the steps and this is what part of this is for me is being honest and vulnerable and kind of getting that out there because I my guides have really been you know, pushing me and I've been feeling that pull of like, you really should get your voice out there so that you can meet the people that resonate, you know?
Yeah. It's such a scary thing. It's such a scary thing. And then I don't know. Because to me, that's another trust thing too. Because it's like, if I do this thing, am I really gonna meet like the people who are meant for me? Are we really gonna come into like how is it all gonna work? I want to play by play. Can you tell me exactly, step by step? And I've not gotten that playbook. Have you?
No. I want the same thing too. I'm like, can you just tell me what's going to happen so I can be prepared for it or tell me what I'm supposed to be doing and I'll start doing it. But they're crickets when I ask that kind of stuff. It's like, nope.
Yeah. No. A lot of that is the same here, and it often leads me to like having to make my own decisions. I'm like, but what if I screw it up? And it's like,
Yeah.
but I don't think we can. And there have been instances in which like I've made a decision and they're like, "Oh, no, that's not quite the right one." And so like that doesn't actually move forward and I find myself presented with something else and I'm like, "Okay." So it's
I mean, it's kind of comforting in that way, right?
yeah.
I mean, 'cause I in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I was definitely felt that a lot. Like it was, I'm like, "Oh, what am I making the right choice? Am I doing the right thing?" And yeah, it's just if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, then they redirect you. And, I think that there's lots of ways for them to kind of guide that a little bit. So, but
Or a lot of
when
it.
yeah. I know the desire though to just, I'm like, I work hard. I'll work hard at it. Just tell me what to do.
There's something so scary about putting so much of yourself and so much time and effort into something that doesn't end up paying off the way that you hope that it will.
Yeah. Yes. I know. I'm well, and it's just like going back to like I just being the age I am, I just like for a long time and even sometimes still, I'm just like I feel cheated. I'm like I'm 41 years old. I'm supposed to not be having the issues that I'm having right now. I'm not supposed to be like without a home and doing all of this stuff. I'm like but it's just kinda the world we're living in right now, unfortunately, too.
It's a scary place out there. It really is. I should take a page out of your book and stop watching the news because it's just like it can be really overwhelming, actually.
It is. I have been, like, really, really trying, and it's hard for me because I kind of like to, I kinda have that tendency to escape from reality, and normally it would be in, a social media app or something, scrolling TikTok, but now all of my videos are just so horrific all the time, and I'm just like, "I can't do this anymore," so I've had to put it down, I do feel better, so maybe take little breaks here and there from it. I would suggest it.
Kacie, because that's one of the other things that, has come up. Ki it's about being more present in my life. 'Cause I like, who wants to be here? Keys, let me go someplace better, right?
Mm,
The whole
mhm.
escapist thing, yeah. So just being more present in my life is another thing, and trying to build new habits and put myself out there, and that's been a whole thing. And it's the whole reason for this podcast, right? Like, it's to get to know you and others better and to try and build community and, see, who resonates with all of this stuff, and it's gonna be super casual kind of a thing because
Why put on Why put on more stress on yourself in this environment right now, you know?
there's already so much, and that's one of the things that I'm really curious too about how this stuff ends up playing out, because I I don't think you and I were the only ones to have that financial aspect on our list, and so I'm really curious to see, like, what ends up actually taking shape as a result. Um, I know for me right now, it's not like it wasn't my most immediate and pressing of needs. I have a little bit because I'm currently unemployed, so I have a little bit of money and in the process of selling the house. And so once the house sells, I'll have the proceeds from that. And then I get to go travel, but it'll be really
It'll be
interesting.
amazing.
I'm really excited about it. I truly have no idea how that's going to play out and what's going to come from it, but you know, to get out there and see parts of the world and, um, different places that I've just never been because 'cause I've not done a whole lot of traveling. I was born and raised here in Georgia and, um, like, it's not a bad place to be, but I don't know what else is out there, you know?
Yeah, I think, I mean, of course, all scenarios we imagine in our head will be a little more difficult than we, want them or intend them to be, but um it traveling is just, it like definitely feeds my soul because Lisa is always talking about how um like different places have different energies and stuff, and that's 100% true. And honestly, it's like I'll go through parts of the country. Like we were just driving to the store a week or two ago, and there was just this little patch of maybe a few like blocks where I was like, wow, this feels like the same energy of like Oklahoma. Like because I have a lot of family in Oklahoma, and it was like this like feels like that energy. Like I feel like I was transported back, to a trip to Oklahoma and stuff. And I was thinking about that, and when I was younger, I was in Japan and I could feel the age of the difference of the vibes in different places. And it's one of my favorite things of going to different places because it does feel so like almost being in a different world, but
What was your favorite place to go to?
that I've ever visited ever. There's so many. Japan, definitely. Like I did a lot of running away from my family before I knew that there was, why I was running away. Your puppy is wanting to talk too.
There's a lot to say always.
But Japan, of course, I got to spend a year in Japan, and I got to see really, really cool old temples and, just kind of be a part of that. That was really great. Belize, I got to go to like it was a cruise, which for someone who gets very, very motion sick, it was pretty awful, except for the excursions. Um, but yeah, we went to like the rainforest, which was really, really cool. And of course, it was raining, and there was like a family in front of us that had a whole bunch of people, and they each bought an umbrella and bought the whole thing out of umbrellas. So like they bought like 20 umbrellas, and like there was none left. So we were just like, all right, let's let's go to the rainforest. And we got to see some cool animals, and it was yeah, but I mean, honestly, probably Japan is the coolest place because I kind of got to spend a little more time there. So
How long were you there in Japan?
a year. I was there from like pretty much my whole when I was 17. It was like a youth exchange, but it was I was a youth ambassador. So I was kind of just an exchange student, but I got to do fun things like give big speeches all the time. And like honestly, I don't know how I ever have any nerves publicly speaking after you have to give speeches in a language you don't even really know. So yeah, I think the first week I got there, they were like, "Oh, you're gonna give a speech in front of your whole high school, and they don't speak English, so do it in Japanese." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that." Yeah, that was fun. I was pretty close to it. It was probably one of the worst experiences because I was like, and they kind of just sprung it on me, and it was like, "Oh, like tomorrow you're gonna be doing this." I'm like, "Oh." So, I muddled through it. I was just like I said the little like two because I didn't go speaking very much. I tried to learn, but it wasn't much. And then so I said a few things, and then I just spoke in English, and I was like, "Yeah, I hope this year goes well."
Oh gosh, the things that we do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I questioned my sanity many times when I was doing this whole thing.
It sounds like it was a lot of fun though.
It was really, really cool. I stayed with four different host families, like 3 months each, and I got my second one, was they a Buddhist priest, which was really amazing. I lived in their house that was connected to their temple, and that was really the best. That was really, I mean, they were all great, but that was really one of my favorite because they were so kind-hearted. And then one of the daughters spoke fairly good English, so it really helped for me to develop my Japanese speaking while I was at that house too. So
Sounds amazing.
yeah, it was definitely experience, but like it just at this it's been like over 20 years ago, so it like definitely feels like another lifetime, But
Yeah, I hear you. Like 2 weeks ago to me feels like another lifetime sometimes. So
I know, I know.
oh gosh, yeah. I don't know. I would love to go like to Costa Rica, but or like to Europe. But like if I were to go to Costa Rica or someplace like that, I wouldn't want to do like one of the kitschy spiritual things because I think that's like all
Mm,
the rage there. I'd want to
mhm.
actually go and experience like the land and the culture and that sort of a thing. And I think going to Europe would just be fun because I've never been over there and there's like so much I think that you can do in the way of travel there and you can see a whole lot more. Um, in a shorter amount of time. Not that I would necessarily wanna spend the shorter amount of time there, but, like, it's more condensed than it is here in the
Well,
States.
and public transportation is just like so much better everywhere else almost, it is crazy here, but yeah, if you when you ever do go traveling though, and I found this in Japan or anywhere I go, I try to stay away from as much touristy stuff as I can. And I try to find as more authentic kind of living places as I can too. And that's definitely where it's at. But
Yeah. I know when I go out to, New Mexico, Arizona, one of the things I really wanna do is I wanna go, like, visit the reservations out there because I think that would be really, really cool, and then to support, like, them as, like, the local artists, I think would also be really, really cool. And then, they do in Tucson. come November, they do like this whole Dia de los Muertos celebration that I think would be really cool.
That's where
'Cause
I'm from, by the way.
Tucson?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
just outside of Tucson, but yeah. Um, yeah, the Navajo Nation is really like it's it's sad because they don't have enough resources and they don't, and it's really sad to kind of see what the land we've pushed them to and stuff, but um yeah, definitely get some jewelry from like, I can mostly speak for the Navajo Nation because that's, but the turquoise they have is so gorgeous and it's like it's the vibrations of it are really good too, and then yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh, and I thought for some reason I thought you were gonna say about the Gem and Mineral Show that they have in February in Tucson, and like that might be the only thing that'll ever get me back go back to Tucson at this point. So
Did actually see something about that, when I was online doing some research, and my only hang up about that would be how expensive it is. Because I know at least around here, like, buying, um, like, the gemstones, the crystals and stuff, it's not cheap.
no, and if you go to the public, I always went, they have the wholesalers gem and mineral shows. So if you can get a business license and then you can get tickets to the wholesaler and it's like super so well, it used to be anyways. I haven't been in a few years after since, everything's happened, but it was so much cheaper, like a fraction of the cost and stuff. But yeah, of course, like you have the big public ones where they have the like I think they had like a mammoth skeleton for sale there, and they have like these giant, like taller than I am geodes, and they're really cool to go look at and stuff too there. But it's definitely an experience. But I used to go and get like wholesale pearls. I used to really be into pearls for a long time, and they would just have like oceans of tables of pearls, and it was really cool. So,
That's cool. So what else do you think is fun out there in Arizona?
well, um, I always enjoyed, um, like Sedona is really like in touch spiritually, and like it's really, I didn't spend much time in Sedona. I really did love the north of Arizona, which is more kind of like the Grand Canyon area, and there was more forest and trees, and because that kind of spoke to me a lot. And I really like, I don't know, I really like the vibe of the area up there too. Like I, there's, like Tucson in particular is like if you're really, really rich, they have like the north side of Tucson where like you get all the celebrity spas and people, and I don't know this for sure, but I've heard that like Arnold Schwarzenegger had like a cat like this castle up there and who knows, but like and I know the castle, but you know, um I know that a lot of celebrities go up there and I used to like kind of work in fields where I was like serving them more in like a a lower class, and so I don't have great opinions of it, but it definitely has its beauty, and like for me, the mountains are the most wonderful thing about Arizona and especially that area. Like they are so protected and they're all around you and it's just like the nicest feeling. I always miss like the green and stuff. So like we had monsoons in Arizona where 3 months of the year it just rained and those were like my favorite times because like the desert came to life, it was so much green and it like completely transformed and like I loved it so much. But yeah, the mountains and the sunsets. You have to appreciate the sunsets when you're in New Mexico and Arizona too, because they're, you know, so pretty. And like I like the rainstorms and stuff are really neat there too, because I find, like, here, like, on the, the East Coast and stuff, it's like when it rains, it's just gray everywhere, whereas in Arizona, a lot of the times you would be in the sunshine and you could see a big storm system and it was raining and you could see the water pouring over there, but you're in the sun and so and you get like cool effects where like the rain looks like diamonds kind of because it's like the sun is sparkling off the rain and so it's pretty neat. And I mean, like seen lots of alien spaceships too. So
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that at some point.
um but yeah, no, and I wanted to kind of swing back to the spell
Yeah.
that we were doing and that like and you were talking about that feeling. And that's that word I was trying to figure out, but the anointing and stuff. And like I don't think I even have words for how that felt and how I experienced that. And that like for me that was kind of the feeling that kind of and even right now like even thinking about it I kind of feel it a little bit, and that was pretty I don't know, like I don't know how would you describe it? Because I kind of feel like it was like in this weird sense of like almost better than I've ever felt before. It was like an experience for me that it was like very pure of energy and like I don't know, it it echoed of like past lives to me. Like it almost felt like this is familiar but not in this lifetime.
Yeah, for me, it's like it's a sense of not being alone, actually. So I find it very comforting. So most of the time, sometimes it can be a little scary, but it's funny because after this spell, that wasn't the first time I had felt it, like because I had started working with Guadalupe the end of last year, like the end of August is when I had like my first experience. And it felt like because I feel it in my body, like to me it's a physical sensation. And it felt kind of like this pain relieving sensation, which was like last year, it was almost a euphoric kind of feeling because of all the pain and discomfort that I had been experienced with like the reconnecting, because that was like very physically uncomfortable for me. So that contrast, like in having that energy, if I had to describe it, when I first started working with Guadalupe, it felt like love. Like that was the vibe of it for me. Um, But then after the spell, because, like, things felt different in my body, like, I didn't recognize it immediately as the same energy because it felt different. And so there seemed to have been, like, this sort of transformation, um, and I don't know, like, physically, the way that would describe it after the spell is like static on a TV, which doesn't sound very pleasant, but it's not unpleasant. And it's just again, it's like not being alone, and
Like being held.
yeah, that's really kinda what it is, and one of the things I think it's that, like, I can call upon, the Mother, Guadalupe, this energy when I need to. And it's funny because, you know, I had shared a good bit of my story, I think, in our Discord, and Lisa Lee had come in and talked about like the spine and the role that that plays, because that's where like the energy comes from for me. It comes in, it's channeled in through the spine. Um, so it's just an interesting thing, I think, to experience. Is that something like for me afterwards, for several weeks afterwards, I felt it probably pretty intensely and then it kind of like has tapered off. Though I still feel it like occasionally, especially when I pause and tune in. Has that been the same for you or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, it was pretty similar. I think it was like a week or two and it kind of tapered off as well. And then But definitely when I am working with Hakati, that I feel very like I feel it more, and she's kind of the one I've been her and actually Medusa are the ones I've been working with the longest. So, it was yeah, I don't even know how to describe it, because this was probably my first experience with it, and yeah, it's just, it's like that being held, but it's also like, and probably why I think they even cautioned us of like, listen, like we're not going to give you 100% of what we would have given our followers, before, because you guys would not be able to handle it. And I think I kind of get that because, it was a feeling in my body that almost felt a little, it was almost a little scary. Because of how great it was, and I've been conditioned a lot to be like, "Oh, if it's too good to be true," and I think that I think that, it kinda had that fear a little bit. It was like, "Oh, this is a really good feeling," but it kinda, like, scared me a little too, because it's like, "Well, what comes after this?" So, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, that was a big thing when I first encountered Guadalupe last year. It was like, this like feels too good. It had like an addictive kind of a feeling to it. And that was like, I'd say mildly terrifying for me, especially with some of my like family history. um, feel like as time has gone on, like that fear has really lessened in a lot of ways. And the funny thing is, like, I experienced that energy. There was the anointing and just like the actual presence that I feel, but I also feel the energy like working and doing and like changing in my body, almost like clearing things out. And it gets to a certain point where like things will get cleared out and then I have to go in and do like cord cutting and stuff. Because the way that my body has been like just completely um like imprisoned and bound. I get bound is probably the best word for it, and trying to like free up all of that. I don't know. It's been an experience. And I think that's one of the things like because I growing up would have like physical experiences, but I didn't pay them any mind because like I was like, okay, this is a weird thing that I experienced. Like other people must experience similar things. And it wasn't until recently where I was like, oh, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I have found confusing and interesting about the spiritual community at large because I didn't grow up in this space. I grew up in a very Christian space where, like, this was all there is. You can't look anywhere else. You don't know anything else. Like, this very narrow lane is that's it. And so when I hear a lot of people talk about some of this stuff in the spiritual community, like I'm trying to take what they're saying and understand how it applies to me in my life. It's been really eye opening because a lot of this stuff is so much more like subtle and intangible than what I'm led to believe based on the conversations. Because I see even, like, with the cord cutting, I see people, like, do spells, especially, like, the candles and the cord and running it through. I see them do spells to cut cords, and I look at my life and I'm like, "Man, I just, like, feel this string in my body, and I, like, take imaginary scissors and cut it, hope that it sticks."
Mhm. I mean, it's intention though, right? I fully believe it's intention and permission slips of what helps you believe in things. So I mean, if that works for you, then it works for you, and that's all that's needed.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and I think because so much of what I do is, like, in that felt physical space. So that's just easier for me, I guess. Not that I think there's anything wrong with the candles and the spell work and the production and all that, because I do think it's the same thing. Essentially, it depends on how you work and how you operate and what you're comfortable with. It's just been a really interesting to kind of better understand what like spiritual practitioners talk about in an applied way.
Yeah, and it's like it's a process for me as well, it's like, you know, and it's been such a short amount of time realistically for me. Like I've been into this like, I've had my spiritual awakening and all that stuff, and it's not even been it's been a little over a year for me. So it's so short, and I'm like that's what I keep trying to tell myself if you're so far behind. I'm like, you haven't been doing it that long, like, but yeah, I'm still trying to figure out this whole like, because I feel the world through emotions, where that's where I really get the things, and that's where my intuition comes in, and so I'm, finally just now really trying to really start working with the way that I perceive the world particularly. And I know that I had the same. You were talking about your kid when you were a kid and you had experiences, and I don't remember a lot, but I think that I probably had similar because the few that I did, I mean, I know, like I remember having an imaginary friend when I was little, and her name was Palma, and I remember her very specifically, what she um, was black, and she had this really pretty red dress on, and she had her hair up in bows, I remember the shock or being surprised when my parents called her an invisible friend, because I was like, okay, like she's there, and they were always like, "Oh, it's such an interesting name you chose." And I look back, and Palma is a name that could have been used when this, she looked like she was from the 50s or something, like that's kind of style and stuff, So it's like, but it became, I mean, and I'm sure it became very, I it became very unsafe for me to vocalize those things or even like to even acknowledge them myself. So I feel like that all had to do kind of with the same stuff where I was like, I shut it down. Same time I shut down like the religious stuff and like all of it. It was just very hard, like, nope, no more because you're not safe when you do this, and like what Lisa was saying, even, like your ancestors will probably be like, hey, don't do that. It is unsafe because they had their lived experiences where they were hurt or whatever because of the same things, so they may have influenced that as well, but I don't know. It's just it's hard and there's no like program that everybody can follow. That's the hardest part because everybody has such a different connection to it and different aspects and like it I do wish a lot of times though that we still had that, elder system in place that I was like talking about the other day where it's like you had that scaffolding of people who have been able to know all of this stuff and they're like, "Oh, I see this in you. I can help you with that." And I think we're the elders. I think we're the ones trying to figure it out and we're going to be the ones that are like, "Oh," to the younger generations, which is not fair because, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think on a very wide scale, we've all become so disconnected from ourselves, from our history, from the earth. It's just um, left us in this very isolated state. And I don't think we benefit from it. I think, you know, I sure haven't benefited from it. It's like all this fear and control. And it's so I don't wanna say misplaced because there's very good reasons for it, right? Like, there's so much, like, abuse and neglect that has led to all of this, but trying to undo all that conditioning and reconnect with ourselves and reconnect with spirit and the universe and each other, however you wanna define it, I think that that's really at least for me, that's the only way forward.
I agree. I mean, like, and we know why it was done, why, like, I feel like, you know, the same reason that the top 1% has their fortune tellers on speed dial, and and they know all of this stuff, but then they, with the other hand, try to convince us, and have for generations, that oh, you're crazy if you're listening to your intuition, or because it doesn't serve their purposes, and this has been over and over and over for so many generations, and and it's not only is it learned, but it's also genetic, like I always think about how the abuse that I was getting when I was pregnant is going to affect that trauma is going to affect my grandchildren, because I had a daughter and she already has those eggs that were experiencing those traumas inside, which is like so shitty, and like awful. And it's like, but like hopefully, and I do feel hopeful that enough people now are starting to get it, and maybe we can start turning it around so that my kid and our kids and and their kids can start living a life a little bit better,
So I really think so. And I think the funny thing about control is, we have these people in power who are so intent on controlling everything around them. Like the funny thing is the more that you try to control things, the more that you are controlled and you just wind up in a prison of your own making. So
Which always goes back to the letting go. It's so hard.
yeah,
And it's the only way. It's like it's it's honestly what my guides have been like trying to like pound into my head. They're like, unless you let go, you're holding on to this too much. I'm like, I don't know any other way. It's so hard to let go.
it is so hard. Legitimately, like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's just so icky, and like, yeah, but it is, and it just all goes back into that, like, I want clarity right now, and I want, and they're like, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, but it should.
Yeah. It's really a trust fall in that way though, because it's like I like to have a pulse, like an idea of what's coming, of like what's gonna happen. And a lot of time, like, you know, a lot of times I have, but now I'm like, I have no freaking clue. I have no freaking clue. And that means I'm having to rely on myself and I'm having to rely on them.
Exactly. Well, and then it's mean to give us the pattern recognition that we have, and then to be like, oh, but you can't get this pattern, like, it's mean. I can see so many things happening and what's gonna happen, but then, when it comes to myself, it's just like a blind spot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where, it's up to us to make those decisions and figure out what we want.
I I just wanna, I want it to be taken care of. Can I? I don't wanna make the decisions. I have decision fatigue.
Same. Same. And now I have to put in the hard work of like speaking up and putting myself out there. And what do you mean I might get rejected?
Well, that was exactly like, I pulled some cards on the podcast today, and I'm like, and they're like, they're giving me like the ace of coins. They're like, this is great. You're starting the seed, and they're like, but don't put any, validation into how it's received, and don't look at that, but just do it for the fun. And honestly, it has been a lot of fun, and just talking, and and it's nice to get your thoughts out there.
It's just about the fun. So,
Yes.
uh,
Exactly.
well, if you're ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up. And then I guess I'll schedule another one at some point.
Yeah. Hey, I'm down. Like, how whenever you want to do this, because I had a lot of fun. It was, just like talking with a friend. So
Exactly. I appreciate it. Thank you, Casey.